The meeting
is being recorded.
The meeting shall begin at 7:28. Sorry for your inconvenience. We had a couple technical issues, so it was postponed a little bit, but no discussion on tonight's agenda was made. Okay, so roll call and seating of alternates. So Angie, you here?
Yes, here I am.
Okay. Garth Bean,
Present.
John Kopek,
Here.
Paul Varga,
Here.
Jesse Burnham,
I'm here.
Christina Davis,
Here.
Hugh McKenzie, Esther Jagodzinski, and Judith Austin. So it looks like we have the regular board members seated tonight. Angie, Garth, John, Paul, Jesse, and myself,
And your member at large.
and my member at large.
Or your
Okay.
large member, I'm not sure which.
Okay, for communications, there was a letter that we had got from the Conservation Committee, but I think we're gonna postpone that until Cheryl's here because she knows a lot more about it and she can give us information.
Judy,
I will, yes,
everybody on the board should have gotten a copy of that. It went out late today, however, so and everybody can read it at least, and then
yeah, if we have questions or whatever, maybe Cheryl can answer next week.
is that about? That's not about the agricultural question that's around town right now, is it? No, okay.
No, it's about Yale's pilot money, Bill.
Yeah, the Yale University.
We can
Okay.
send you a copy.
Designates for open
I can
space.
send the Board of Selectmen a copy too.
If you would appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, so that's the only communication that I have. Do we have any public comments at the moment? Okay. We'll move on to approved minutes of the regular meeting for Thursday, February 17th. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
John Kopek, so moved.
Second, Angie DeSanto.
Any discussion?
I found two small typos. Can I go through them?
Sure, go ahead.
On the second page, under number 7, old business continued in the motion. The second line, there's the word unassigned, and there's a number 3 that ended up erroneously in that word. So there's just a typo in the word unassigned. And then on the third page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph down, it says on the second line, previously as our revenues were depleted by $1,030,000, I think it should be the new numbers as opposed to the writing out, just for clarity. But that's all I saw.
Okay. I also had one on the second page for the revenue sources paragraph. It was actually line 3. for the fiscal year, and the transfer amount may increase, blah, blah, blah. And also we had the removal of closing the account paragraph removed. Okay, so anybody else? If there's no other corrections, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye, Angie DeSanto.
Aye, John Kopeck.
Paul Varga, aye.
Jesse Burnham, aye.
Yes. And ditto for Garth Bean.
Judy Austin, aye. Vote passes unanimously. Okay, approved minutes. Where did my agenda go? Okay, Selectmen's update. Bill, you have the floor. Bill, are you there?
I'm here. Sorry, I was muted. I said I would be brief. I believe I mentioned it to you folks at our last meeting. We have taken delivery of our new dump truck, and it's ready for action. Our folks got it ready. Just a point of interest, I know I spoke briefly about it last week. The full-size dump truck that we've got proposed in the Public Works budget right now, the 2008 International, actually broke down during a storm last Saturday. And I commend our highway department again. They've been working on it all week. They thought that we had a blown engine on that would run us anywhere from 12 to 15,000 and probably be laid up for a couple of months. They found it was a bit of a simpler solution, a $2,300 fix with a part. It's back on the road, but it's just more evidence that that truck is very undependable. And of course, they never break down when you don't need them. So the Board of Selectmen met on the yesterday on the 23rd, continuing our review. We're also fine tuning our thoughts regarding the additional position for the town office building that I mentioned to you last week. We'll have more information for you. We're going to meet again on the 9th in preparation of our recommendations to you on the 10th. So we'll have more information on that. I know your board likes to keep updated on things sometimes that aren't necessarily finance, but our COVID percentages continue to drop in the region. The Board of Education last night voted to go to the optional mask situation on starting on March 7th. I'm sure Jane or Craig could address that in an appropriate time if you needed to. The only exception to that will be the riders of our buses, because under a federal regulation, there's a federal mandate that continue until the 18th, through the 18th. So that's all I have right now. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have about anything else.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay. All right, so we're going to agenda item 7, old business, the Board of Ed non-lapsing fund, and discussion of transfer of funds from the unassigned fund balance to the Board of Education non-lapsing fund. You guys got all the information from Paul, correct? Hello?
I guess since Cheryl's not here, I'll throw myself under the bus and ask if there's any questions on the information that you got.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Do we have a motion for particular monetary value. You have the 10%, the 10.5, and the 11% calculations for the amounts. The unassigned, we can move 77 to 155.38. Any thoughts?
I'm a little, Judy, it's Paul.
Hi.
My only concern is without Cheryl here, I want to make sure the motion is worded right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But I think that, I'd be more, I'll make a motion that the Board of Finance, at the Board of Ed, as the Board of Ed requested, remove the maximum of 2%, which is the $155,378 from the unassigned fund balance to the Board of Ed non-lapsing fund. The only caveat I don't even know how to do that, is to make sure the motion is right with Cheryl so that the funds are getting moved in the right manner.
I think we could table it to next week too, if we,
If you want to do that, again, Cheryl's not here. We already had one technical problem. I don't want to muck up the motion and have to make it
So-
worse.
why don't we move it to next week?
Okay.
Motion
What
to
does the rest of
table
what does everybody else think? Any comments?
Fine with me if there's no rush for it.
Is that Jesse?
No, it's Garth.
Oh, Garth? Okay.
I just
Sorry.
have, I have a question for Craig, and I know this is a project that's kind of critical to get it done sooner rather than later. Craig, can you give us any input if this puts you in a difficult situation? Because in addition to getting that project kicked off the ground, I know that there's a lot of complicated paperwork to go with our grant fund that you're going to have to get in. Is this week going to hinder, postponing for a week going to hinder it from your end of it?
Not at all, Bill. There's never been an urgency for the money. I've said repeatedly, our greatest pressure is not from capital or any immediate expense, but down the road with a potential special ed outplacement. I don't feel, though, that the wording requires any type of special language. I think you could move it, but again, there's no urgency. And I want to thank the Board of Finance again. It's been a long discussion, about 4 months now, but I do appreciate the opportunity, which for us is a once in a lifetime opportunity to fund that non-lapsing fund. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. No bad thing or need is going to come up in the next week. There's never been an urgency on that. And I appreciate the cooperation and the collaboration.
So, Chairman, then I'll tell you what, I'll make a motion that we table this action to March 3rd, our March 3rd meeting, which is next week. And specifically to move the 2% value of 155,378 from the unassigned fund balance to the Board of Ed non-lapsing fund.
I think that's like, I think you have to take back your motion, your first one, right?
There was no second.
Yeah, there was no
Okay.
second, and I really was asking a question, but that's okay. There was no second.
Okay,
I'm not even sure we need a motion to postpone. I think if we just don't take action on it, it just winds up on next week's agenda anyway.
Yeah, I don't think you formally have to table. I think you just postpone action.
okay. So we'll just postpone the action till March 3rd. Which brings us to the next thing, the transfer of funds from the unassigned fund balance to CNR fund. We don't have enough information yet on this. Right. I would suggest tabling.
What information are we missing?
So we don't know what the ARPA funding is going to cover. There's a lot of loose ends to the So what we're gonna end up with an actual number for CNR? Bill?
Yeah, I'm not so sure you're missing anything, but I think everybody's comfort level would be, I know mine would be with Cheryl being here. She's got up-to-date numbers. And we're talking about a lot of money, changing account numbers. And I think just from a technical perspective, I would suggest to your board that you delay on any of that, pending her return on the 3rd.
Okay. Anybody else from the board? Okay, so postpone this action, table it to March 3rd. Number 8, new business, Ashford School Budget Presentation by the Ashford Board of Education. Mr. Cruller, you're on.
I appreciate that. I'm just going to share my screen and we'll get started. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Beautiful. Okay, first, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity and the continual collaboration and cooperation, not only with the Board of Finance, but with our first selectman, Bill Folletti, who has been great through this entire process. And I want to now turn it over to Jane Urban, our chair, who was on with us tonight and did an amazing job moderating our community conversation last night on COVID, and then we'll get rolling. So Chairman Urban.
Thank you very much, Craig. I'll be brief. I just wanted an opportunity to thank the Board of Finance for listening to this presentation, considering what the Board of Ed has proposed for our budget. I'll tell you that this is a hard one. I've been on the board for over 4 years now, and this budget process was especially challenging because we're well aware of the economic challenges many in our community are facing. But at the same time, we're faced with contractual obligations that we have to meet, and the challenges of bridging over we'll say the troubled waters that COVID has created in the educational realm. So our goal with this budget was to minimize costs in as many areas as possible, at the same time doing the best by our students. So I know Superintendent Kreller and Dina Sharzan have worked very hard on this, and I'll turn it back to Craig so he can go through the details for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Urban. I just want to start by saying that people always ask me what budget season is or when budget season is, and I say it's always budget season. We've been working for months on this budget. The Board of Education did approve at the February 10th meeting, though, a status quo budget. It was a BOE special meeting. That budget at that time on February 10th represented, you can see on the slide at the bottom, a 7.64% increase. Now, that is a huge number. We understand that. We also understand that things change from week to week. We've been very successful in driving hard negotiations, both on healthcare and on energy costs, which are two of the very few areas, believe it or not, that we control. And I have some good news to report that in collaboration with the town and the first selectman, we were able to hire a new insurance broker and bid our business out to 9 different companies and save approximately $253,000. So I'm actually very happy to report some good news in just a few slides. What you're going to see tonight, and I promise to be brief, is that most of the budget is literally beyond our control. It's collective bargaining agreements, salary increases, and in fact, health insurance, which has been the huge driver for many years now. We're with United Healthcare now, and we were looking at 29, 26, 19.9% increases, just absolutely catastrophic to our budget, which is why First Selectman Folletti and I chose to move to a different insurance broker. We're continuing to negotiate energy supplies. We joined the regional consortium. We were told to budget $3 or more per gallon. We're currently paying $1.83. We've been able to negotiate on our own, and I thank Ms. Charzan for this, down to about $2.68. We think we might do even better. It does depend, unfortunately, on what's happening in Ukraine right now, but we're definitely not going to raise the budget for diesel, and we use 41,000 gallons or more because we run our own buses, pay $3 a gallon. So that's sort of the bottom line. This is the most important slide in the entire presentation. I'll just be honest, if you had to have one document and I could only send you one slide, this would be it. There are 9 budget categories in our budget. 5 of them have already been cut to the bone. We've already reduced 5 of the 9 to 0, or you see in the case of special education, it's actually going down by $46,000. So we've controlled all of the costs that we can control. What you'll see at the end of your documents, I see some of you looking at them now, is a line by line item. We now have our entire accounting system computerized in Infinite Visions. There are 169 line items in that document. We have reduced or flattened 107 of the 169. What you see on this slide are the things that are literally beyond our control. The first line, which you should number 1 because it matches the highlighted number 1 in your line by line description. This is group 1. Number 2, non-certified. These are salaries for teachers and staff. Number 3, employee benefits. And if you go down further to energy, oil, gas, and diesel, that is actually number 8. So 1, 2, 3, and 8 are the 4 that are somewhat beyond our control, but we've driven a hard bargain when it came to employee benefits and energy. And those are the ones we're attempting to reduce right now. And I have some good news to report to you. We will not be asking for a 7.64 tonight. We will be asking for a 5.9. But before we do that, I do want to show you this slide. This is just a graphic example of how salaries and benefits take up more than 86% of our budget. The sliver that is left, which you see all of the small categories, is what we essentially spend on teaching and learning. So no question that salaries and benefits are the driver of the Board of Ed budget. The next slide is important because even though the Board of Ed approved up to 7.64, I am proud to report that we will be asking for no more than 5.9%. So if you had to circle something on this slide, that would be the number. And the reason for that is we sent our insurance business out to 9 companies. 6 refused to bid because our claims history was too high. However, 3 did. And the one that came in with the most savings was the state plan. The savings of approximately $253,000. That was $194,000 to the Board of Education and approximately $59,000 to the town. So it behooves us to make the switch from United, which was looking at a 20% increase or more, to move to the state plan and try to save together as a town $250,000 or more. That savings alone, along with some adjustments to the diesel, is probably going to save us well over 2.5%. That's going to bring us down in the high 5% range. We know that we can have a status quo budget at 5.9, which is what I shared with the Board of Ed last week. So a lot has happened in the last 2 weeks. I want to thank Bill Folletti for working with me carefully on the insurance. I want to thank the Board of Education for promoting a status quo budget. There are no new FTEs in this budget. There are no new positions. In fact, we've made some cuts to 5 of the 9 areas. What you're going to see in the line items is that from 2018-19 to 2023, most accounts are either flat or actually have decreased in the last 4 years. So we've done the best we could sharpening the pencil on all 169 categories and line items, but still the salaries and the benefits remain our biggest challenge. All right, that's a brief presentation. When I met with Judy and Paul back in December, I promised I would do no more than 4 or 5 slides. So we're at that limit. I'd like to actually have a rich conversation about it. And Dina Charzan is here as well. We can answer any questions on the line by line. Just note that those line items actually coincide with these 9 categories on this slide. If you were to number them 1 through 9, there's a 1-to-1 match to the line item budget that you have in your hands.
So, Craig, I know I had asked you quite a lot of questions the other night, but I came up with some more.
Okay.
Surprise, surprise, right?
Okay.
So on the back of the slides that you gave us, there was the COVID-related funding grants. When it states salaries this year and next year, how many people does that cover?
The COVID-related grants are very specific. We currently have only half of one person in the grant, Judy. And that is our math interventionist, which we would like to move fully to the local.
Okay. So we discussed that the salaries between the certified staff and uncertified staff had gone up 331, 222. When are these contracts up and how are we going to approach the spending? Because I know as an essential employee for the last 2 years, I've not gotten a raise and I've gone to work every day. And I'm sure there's a lot of the public that's looking at this saying, you know, that's a pretty good increase. What would you say to them?
Two things. One, the reason these are separate categories on this slide that you're looking at right now is because these certified salaries, which is basically the AEA teachers, the Ashford Education Association, that contract will be up next year, which is why we increased our line item for legal fees, because that's going to be a difficult negotiation. The non-certified compensation, which is actually everybody else, that's paras, custodians, cafeteria, bus drivers, et cetera, that contract was just renewed before my arrival for 3 more years. So the first contract is in year 2 out of 3. The second line item, they're non-certified, is in year 1 of 3.
So is there a way that you can do contracts like on a singular year basis, or is there something that you can do differently?
Well, I think we're going to do a number of things differently. A 1-year contract would be unusual, but not unheard of. That does happen. It often happens when you have high inflation years or you're in a gap year where something is happening in the economy, very much like COVID. So that's a possibility. But I do think our best bet is to take advantage of legal counsel. Some of these contracts were not negotiated with the full collaboration with our attorneys, and I'd like to bring the attorney back to the table.
I appreciate that. So I only have 2 more, so I don't hog everybody else up. How long was the last superintendent on the premises? Was he there for the entire year? Do you know?
I believe 12 years, I believe.
No, for this last year.
Do you
Urban.
mean, yeah, I think if I'm hearing your question correctly, Judy, and correctly, maybe I'm answering the wrong question. His contract went through June 30th. I believe he worked something like 78 days a year. He was a part-time when Craig started and his contract was negotiated. We upped the number of days the superintendent worked. So if you look at the increase in superintendent salary, that actually has to do with Craig working more days than the former superintendent worked.
Excellent. That's what I want to hear. The other question I have is, who was on the negotiation committee to decide this contract?
Craig's contract?
Yes.
That was Marion Matthews and John Lippert, the former chair of the Board of Ed. Marion is the vice chair of the Board of Ed. So the chair and vice chair negotiated with Craig.
Okay.
Judy, those contracts are eventually approved by the entire board, and the town has a copy of that contract, as they do all of our contracts. And we're in the process of making a new website. We'd like to post them all in the very near future.
I appreciate that. All right, I'll give you a break from mine. Somebody else can pick on them. I'm not picking on you, really. I'm just inquisitive.
It's okay.
Judy, I have 2 questions, I think. That's it for Craig. And maybe
Yeah.
for Jane too. The new healthcare package, is that going to require any type of union approval? Or is it just the notification of a change of provider?
Paul, most contracts, including ours, Board of Ed and town contracts, have a caveat that the Board of Ed or the town has the right to change insurance carriers as long as the coverage is equivalent. And usually that means equal or better. I hope it doesn't come to that, because quite frankly, having had both the state plan and United, in my humble opinion, the state plan is not only cost effective, it is far superior insurance. I think that most of our town folk and Board of Ed employees would be happy to move to that insurance. That's a discussion for another day, but I want everyone who's listening to know that we would never allow any insurance move without fully covering all of our people. Even if there's some odd medication or procedure that somebody needs, we write those into the new contract as exceptions. So we take care of our people as we change insurance carriers.
I've been involved in it as a union employee, so I know sometimes it's not necessarily even the employees that are, I guess, a grievance, that it's just the union itself in general. And then, so my second question has to do with the math interventionist that you spoke of, the half or the 0.5 position. Is that reflected as a full-time position now in this new budget, or is that something that you're still trying to figure out?
No, that's a very good question. We had a Spanish teacher leave due to a maternity leave, and we were able to replace them with the math interventionist. Previously, that position had come 50% out of a grant. We'd like that position to be full-time. It's sort of an even Steven. The Spanish teacher left, and we still have one Spanish teacher, but we replaced that salary with the math interventionist. So the FTEs, the full-time equivalent for last year, next year will be the same, 44.45. It's the same.
I will mention one thing though, Paul. The math interventionist is a more senior employee than the Spanish teacher was. So I believe our Spanish teacher was maybe in her second or third year of teaching, whereas our math interventionist is an experienced teacher. So obviously there's a step difference in salary there.
But I recall reading somewhere that the math intervention thing was one of the, if you will, hot button issues that needed to be addressed as far as the math scores, I guess it is what it was. So
yeah, our math scores are consistently significantly lower than the state recommended average, as well as the surrounding towns. If you look at Willington and Ashford, Mansfield, sorry. And so it's something that the board thinks is critically important. We had hoped to have a reading interventionist and a math interventionist. And unfortunately, we're only able to fund a math interventionist.
okay, all right,
Thank you,
that's
Jen.
it for now. Thank you.
I have one more question on the line of that. So the COVID funding, we know that the COVID funding is going to run out eventually. Is the COVID funding covering some of the staff salaries?
It previously covered half of the math interventionist. We'd like to put the math interventionist into this budget and replacing the Spanish teacher, but there's very little staffing in there. There's some early speech language pathology, and there will be some salaries for summer catch-up camp and after-school tutoring. Unlike the ARPA ESSER money that the town receives, there are very specific caveats with the ARP ESSER money for the school district, and we oftentimes cannot use it for salaries. It certainly cannot be used to supplant any existing position. So we're in a tough spot. We only receive $453,000. That money has to last us 3 years, Judy. It's not renewed every year. We've already received our allotment for this year and 2 more years. So we really have to be frugal and spend that money wisely. The focus of the money has to be on closing the academic achievement gap. It can't be used sort of with broad latitude the way the town monies can. It has to be specifically for academic achievement and closing the achievement gap. So it's difficult sometimes to spend that money. It's very specific.
Yeah, and just to emphasize Craig's point, the money specifically said it could not be used to offset basically things that are normally in the Board of Ed budget. So we couldn't take a staff member that we already had contracted to work for us for the year and say, oh, now we're paying you out of this grant. That's specifically a provision of the grant that you cannot do that. This was to make up for issues and deficiencies that arose from learning gaps related to COVID and remote learning and all of those things. And so that is why our math interventionist was able to be partially funded from this, because that
Correct.
was a position that we did not have on the books before receiving the grant.
So what happens when we run out of the money? Are we keeping her full-time?
We would like to move that math interventionist, Judy, into this budget. This budget that we're presenting tonight includes the math interventionist who has replaced one of our 2 Spanish teachers. So it's an even Steven. And yes, you're correct. When the money runs out, the position would normally run out. We would like to move that person into the local to replace the Spanish teacher who left. And Jane is absolutely correct. There are 8 or 9 provisions I have to sign at the end of these grants, and I have to guarantee that we're not supplanting. It's sign your life away to get that money. It's quite involved.
So what happens to the remaining balance if that teacher is being put into your budget and you have a remaining balance of the $126,000? What do you do with that?
Excellent question. We have a 3-year plan. It involves some computer adaptive software. It involves 2 summers worth of catch-up camps for students who are behind academically. And it also involves some resources for social emotional learning to make our kids are academically and emotionally stable and happy and ready to learn. So it sounds like a lot of money, but it has to last 3 years.
And Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there some after-school intervention as well, or
Yes.
assistance for kids?
Yep.
So in addition to the summer learning opportunities, there's also after-school intervention opportunities for students who need it.
So is that fund also added to the other fund, the ARPA ESSER? Are they together for this? Developing recovery, learning recovery?
Yeah, that's all in the grant, not in local. None of that is in the local budget.
Okay. Sorry, somebody else.
No, good questions.
Can I ask some questions?
Sure.
I'm going to beat Jesse to this because I know that this is his favorite topic, but I'm going to ask it first. So the switch from Apple to Chromebooks, what is the timeline on that? And what do you do with the old computers? And what is the savings that you think you'll see from that, if any?
Excellent question. The old computers are not old, they're new. And we
Right.
intend to use them in the upper grades, in grades 5 through 8. That's our one-to-one initiative right now with iMacs. We just bought padded cases recently so the students can take them home. But for K4, we would like to move toward a Chromebook environment and potentially even in the upper grades as well, where they could be literally assigned a Chromebook like a textbook, have it with them 24/7 on vacations at home, and then use the iMacs for what they're designed for, which is more intense work, more special projects. And our main motivation to do that is actually to put a device in everybody's hand, kindergarten all the way through 8th grade, rather than just 5 through 8. The iMacs are wonderful, but they're quite expensive, and we can buy 3 to 4 Chromebooks for the price of one iMac. And as far as savings, there would be none, because we would take the savings to buy more devices for the lower grades. And it's interesting to note that we've checked with area towns and also Region 19. They're all 100% Chromebook, as is E.O. Smith High School. So we feel that's the better move for the future. It's a more cost-effective move, and it actually allows our students to take the device home rather than have a very expensive iMac that could be damaged even with the padded cases. So we think that's a good move for the future, but the devices we have now are new. We're using them successfully in grades 5 through 8, and we'll continue to use them, but we'd like to spread the device, if you will, to all of K8.
And just to reiterate Craig's point, we're not throwing away what we have. The plan is, as replacements or new computers are needed, they would be replaced with Chromebooks, which are lower cost than a Mac. So it wouldn't be like, hey, we've got all these Macs and now we're going to ditch them. It's as we need to replace items or as we need to expand computer and technology access, it would be buying Chromebooks in place of our old policy of buying Macs. I mentioned to Craig, our former superintendent always said the Chromebooks weren't sturdy enough for kids to bring home. And that was why we had to go with the Macs. So Craig and I did have a great discussion about the plan and how the focus would really be on the Chromebooks being used in those younger grades, as Craig said, the kids who don't bring them home, whereas the older kids who do have the opportunity at times to bring their laptops home would have the slightly sturdier Macs that we have existing in our technology book, account already, ones we already have purchased.
So
Rudy?
Jane, while we're on the subject right now, have asked for several years for an asset list. Did we ever have the asset list made for all the computers and other technology that we're maintaining?
Yes, I'll let Craig confirm. I know they've been going through quite a big inventory list. We have a system to barcode and tag each device so that we can track them and keep an eye on them. But I'll let Craig chime in.
Thank
Judy,
you.
I'm actually going to turn that over to Dina, who is on top of this project. We did purchase a state-of-the-art inventory system. It's much like a barcode scanner you'd see at the supermarket or Home Depot or the store. Dina, if you're still on with us, you can answer that, or I'll jump in.
The system that we were using, the labels were not robust enough to stand up to use, and they were rubbing off. It was a difficult system. We recently purchased a WASP system, which is a software, and it has a little handheld device. Create the barcoded labels. Once you create the label number, you go in, you update the field with the device type, the date it's purchased, the out of service date. There's multiple fields on this software, and you can scan things in and out and keep a running list. It's quite robust, and it's state of the art, and we're looking forward to getting started with it. We have the equipment. We just need to do the training and start doing the advice. So we're transferring from one system to another.
Awesome.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
If I going to the actual line items document, so the column, and this is a basic question because I'm new, but so bear with me. So the columns that say historical for 1920 and 2021, are those the actual spending for those years, or is that what was budgeted for those years?
Dina, do you want to field that one?
Christina, you asked a very good question. And I'm going to reserve an answer until I can look into it more closely. The way that these past years were handled was a little bit different than how we've handled 21, 22, and how we're going to handle the years going forward. So I don't want to give you information that may or may not be correct. So just let me, I'm going to look into that and I'll get right back to you.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I would want, I can't speak for all the other board members, but I would want to see what the actual spending was for each of those as opposed to what the budget was. And then do you ever provide, as far as the approved number for 21, 22, do you ever provide how much has been spent year to date? You know, for example, you know, I don't know, any of these line items, right? That if $80,000 is budgeted, but you've only spent $1,000 of it at this point. Is that something that is ever provided?
So Christina, I'll let Craig chime in a second. I'll just say that we do receive that at Board of Ed meetings on a regular basis. Under our former business manager, we would do lots of transfers throughout the year And so it was a little bit hard to track. And one of the things I really appreciate about, a thing that Dina has implemented is we're actually waiting to do those transfers until the end of the year, closer to when we know exactly what each category will be 100% for sure. And so it's very easy for us as a board, when we look at the financial statements every month, to see where we're underspending, where we're overspending, how it differs. There were, everyone on the Board of Finance should remember that neither Dina nor Craig were here when the prior budget was prepared. So for example, they learned upon digging into the financials when they started that our budget last year underestimated our fuel costs. And partially that may have been a mistake. It also may have been because the year prior was such an unusual year that looking at the year prior spending, there was a smaller amount than what was needed budgeted. So the Board of Ed does receive monthly financial reports, and it does show how much has been spent in each category, how much has been promised, how much salary do we know we have left to pay for the year versus what we have left in the account. And it's all kind of laid out in a nice spreadsheet that we look at monthly.
Great. And I have one last question. And this
Christina,
is-
could I just add to that? I want to
Yes.
answer your question. Everything Chairman Urban said is accurate. We do it on a monthly basis at our business meetings. We also do it at the end of the year, both to make a final return to the town and also to pass audit. And I'm proud to say that we came through the audit with flying colors. So we have a good system now. Your question earlier about the earlier year budgets, those were manual budgets. The approved now and our request for 2022-23 has completely loaded into our infinite vision systems. We know these numbers are accurate. And that's why perhaps Dina paused on the 1920 and the 2021. But the approved right now has been loaded into our system. We know these estimates are to the penny, and the request, of course, is already preloaded into our system. So we've made a huge shift in the last 4 or 5 months to a computerized accounting system rather than spreadsheets and elsewhere. So we have confidence in the 21-22 and the 22-23.
Very good. My last question, and this is my sort of parent hat, and something that's sort of been a bee in my bonnet, is looking at the line items under the staff. There's certified staff library specialist, and that's kind of bopped all around. It looks like maybe at one point there was a full-time salary in there for 52, then it went down to 30, then it's going down to 26. So what is the staffing plan for the library at the school? Because personally, this is my personal opinion, I feel like that's been an under-resourced area of the school for a very long time.
Christina, I'll start and then I'll let Craig jump in, since I can speak to the past and I'll let Craig speak to the future. So that position, I agree. I think it's very important. I think it's been, I think our school library really needs the attention that a library media specialist could give it. So that position started as an employee that was part-time doing that, and part-time had other responsibilities in the building, and then became full-time doing that. And then said employee had a baby and decided she wanted to come back part-time if possible. And so she came back part-time as the library media specialist. I don't know what her plans are for the future, so I'll let Craig address the future, but that's why originally it was part-time. She had other responsibilities as well. She always has done a large variety of things, but after having a child, decided part-time was the right schedule for her, at least for some period of time. So Craig, if you could address the future aspect.
Good question. Same person, still part-time.
Okay.
Christina, I actually have an answer for you on the historical 1920 and 2021 figures. Those are actually the budgeted figures for those 2 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
So I got a couple questions or concerns. Floor is open. I can't help but make a comment about the line item for the superintendent salary. So far things seem really good, Craig. I don't want to sound bad about this, but long before you were even selected, I brought the concern up about not trying to box the new superintendent into being a part-time position. So I just wanted to bring that concern up, nothing different than what Judy had said. I did have a question, and probably the last maybe 3 or 4 years, we've had a chart that shows how many students are in each class level and how many teachers support those. I was wondering if that was created at all or could be created to come to a future meeting with. And only other question I had was, there was talk about all the old computers would still be used, but what about all the desktop computers, the Apple computers that are a desktop and not a laptop? I've been hearing that they're stacked up all throughout the school.
Jesse, thank you for the questions. First, in terms of my salary, I'm working a minimum of 33 additional days. So that's the difference in the salary. I, for the life of me, can't understand how anyone did it in 78 days. It's not possible. Sometimes I work 6, 7 days a week, 12, 15, 18 hours a day. So that represents the difference in the salary. So I want to be upfront about that. In terms of the chart class, we actually created that for the Board of Education. I will email it to you immediately. Just give me a few minutes. We have a detailed list of staff by grade level and also paraprofessionals, paraeducators, both for gen ed and special ed. The board already has it. I'll email it to you tonight. And in terms of the Macs, all of our available Macs that are still able to be upgraded have been moved to a MIDI lab down in our industrial arts wing of the building down below the middle school. And we have a music lab set up there. So we're making the most of any device that can be updated. Apple products do eventually become obsolete. You can't upgrade the operating system, and those we recycle. But we're using those Macs you're talking about.
Okay, I just, my son just was very concerned about how he just sees stacks of them all over various parts of the school. So he was asking me and telling me all about them. I didn't know if that was even something that they could be, hard drives cleaned up some and sold to any families in town that might want them, like an older one that might be considered obsolete to the school, but might still be useful for a family in town.
I had the same question for our tech director. I think some of these have reached their useful life, but I will revisit that immediately. I'd love to be able to do something productive with those. There comes a point when you can't upgrade some devices past 10.6 and new apps require 12, 13 or higher. So we get stuck sometimes on the older units, but if they have any value, your suggestion is well received. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's what it is. Apple, I've run into this a number of times. I have a lot of Apple stuff, but Apple operating system just won't work on it. But for me, I've loaded Linux, so I can still use a computer. So just different operating system, but nobody wants to do that. Trust me.
So Craig, could you share the student list and stuff with me also, please?
Absolutely. I'll send it to you immediately as soon as we're done.
Yeah, thank you. Go to the whole board.
Do we know if there's been a change?
No, it's 44.45. It's the same exact FTE. I want to be clear about that. We had a Spanish teacher leave, and in the proposed budget, we were replacing with the math interventionist. There's been no physical increase. In fact, we're actually down one paraeducator now, but our staffing level for certified staff teachers is identical.
No, I mean students.
We're
Quantity
very
of
close.
students.
No, we're very close to 400, just under 400, about 391. That number is going to stay the same for the next few years. We did receive an enrollment study this year. It'll go down maybe a few students and then back up in about 6 or 7 years. As part of our grant process to receive reimbursement for the oil tank and the roof, we had to engage in an enrollment study. So we have very accurate enrollment numbers for the next decade.
Any other questions?
I have several. I was just waiting for everybody else to get their turns in first.
Yeah, go ahead,
Go ahead,
John.
John.
Okay, what did you say that the dollar amount was in savings for the health insurance by changing companies?
Our latest estimate is 253,000. We believe 59,000 of that will go to the town, and 194,000 of it would be in the Board of Ed budget. Now, we've already calculated a huge chunk of that into this budget. We had budgeted 10% for insurance, even though we were getting 26% increases from United. We knew and we're determined to get that number down below 10%. So it is going to push our 7.64 down to about 5.9. We're really excited about that. We're still trying to negotiate diesel. There's a lot going on right now, but we're not going to pay $3 a gallon. The number we pay now, $1.83 a gallon, is artificially low. We received an unbelievable contract from Dime Oil last year. You have to remember that last year during COVID, many towns were closed when Ashford was open, and that drove the price of diesel artificially low. Diesel is up 50% or more this year, and we're fighting hard to get that number down to something realistic, $2.49, $2.50, anything less than $3 or the $3.55 or more that we would have to pay at the pump. So we're working hard on that.
Okay, so the net savings on the health insurance is 194,000.
That's what we believe on the renewal.
Right. So I'm just as far as the dollar amount reduction for the percentages, I'm trying to get that slide in front of me here. Hang on a second. Okay. Almost there. So in the budget reduction progressions, 5.9 is a reduction of 139,000. But if we're saving 194 net on the health insurance, where's the rest of that?
John, we're going to continue to drive that number down. By the time we get to referendum, we'll have an exact number. We're hoping to get a little more savings on diesel as well.
Right, but that right now, to get to 5.9% is a reduction of 139,000 off your original 7.64% proposal.
That's correct.
So we're actually below 5.9% then at the 194,000 in savings so far on the health insurance.
That's what we're hoping.
So that would take us closer into the high fours, wouldn't it?
Don, if I could just clarify, the savings, the 248,000 in savings, that's the savings off of the original renewal that United had came back to us with. They came back at 29%, and then they came back with 19%. The state partnership came back with a rate approximately 8.5% to 10%. They're still working on their numbers for the following year. So the savings difference that we're talking about, that 248, that's the savings between the 19 and the 10. That's where that savings is coming from. So the difference that you see on that budget slide with the employee benefits being up 248, 826, that is merely the 10% increase. if we didn't have the savings from United versus the partnership, the difference in that line item would be closer to 500,000.
Okay.
John, I
I
want to
just-
answer your question directly. I'm a math nerd. I taught math for 19 years. You're not inaccurate in what you're saying. What Dina is saying is we didn't put the budget forward at 20% because there was no way we were paying 20% to United. So we based this budget on a 10% increase. We think we're going to get 8%. That is going to push this budget somewhere down between 5.21 and 5.9. We will have an exact number very soon. So I want to be upfront about that. You're not off on your numbers at all.
Okay, that's perfect. That's fine. Let's see, moving on here. On the line items here, looks like the vice principal salary went up over 10%.
That's a great question. That is what Chairman Urban referred to earlier as a budgeting error. That was not budgeted correctly last year. Our assistant principal was a teacher in the school making the $85,000 salary. And when she moved to become vice principal, she got the same salary that the previous vice principal got 4 years ago, which was approximately $97,000. And for some reason, that was not up in the budget. That number from 2021-22 should have been the 97,000. We call those, John, laughably NBC. And that has nothing to do with the network, not budgeted correctly. That's one of about 11 errors like that Dina and I found when we transferred the system from paper pencil over to a digital computerized accounting system, Infinite Visions. So your pickup is spot on. We agree with you, but there was no increase. The assistant principal salary has been 97,000 for 4 years. For some reason, that person was carried over at their previous teaching salary, but they actually did in fact earn the 97. So very good pickup.
John, her contract for this school year, for the 21-22 school year, is actually 94,000. That contract is posted with the town hall. So the approved 21-22 coming in at 87,125 is not correct. It should have been 94. So
Right,
there's a $1,000 increase over last year on that line item.
Right, and I'll mention that when the assistant principal started in that position, it was the middle of a school year, and so it would have been January of 2020, and she completed the remainder of that school year as an intern, not earning the administrator salary. So I think that's possibly how her salary went into the next year's budget incorrectly, because she was not being paid an administrator's salary. She was doing basically acting as the assistant principal, kind of as an unpaid internship while being paid as a teacher salary. So that was from January 2020 through the end of that school year. And then the mistake was carried forward into the 2021 budget, as Dina and Craig have explained.
That sounds good to me. Let's see. Craig, did you mention that there were also attorney's fees included in the certified salary line item for contract negotiations?
They're not in certified salaries. They are in, I believe, category 9, which is other. If you go to the very last page, category 9 is highlighted, and you'll see legal expenses, special ed and regular ed. We did put $20,000 extra into legal fees. That's one of literally only a handful of increases, John, that we made in the entire budget. We are coming into a contract year. We feel it behooves us to have legal representation during the collective bargaining negotiations. And we're just trying to be realistic about what that might cost, that it's not an unusual number. Certainly if we spend less, that would be part of our return to the town. But it would be foolish not to increase the legal fees every 3 years when there's a contract negotiation.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I don't know why, for some reason, I thought that it was part of the certified salaries, and I just wanted to make sure that it was not in that specific line item. So that's fine.
Definitely category 9 right in the middle on the last page.
And what page number is that?
It's the very last page of your handout. It is category 9, right in the middle. Excuse me, the next to last
Okay.
page. And
Okay.
it is, it's
I just want to make sure I have the
100.
right document.
Yes, it's page 4 of that
4, right? Okay.
5-page document.
Okay, yep, I've got that.
I apologize that I didn't number them for you. I'll make sure that they get numbered.
No, that's okay. I'm used to seeing much different information from your budget on the Board of Finance. Normally, there's multiple years from previous budgets, including a year or two of audited actuals. Those are really helpful to us, at least to me, as I'm trying to see trends. I understand you've changed systems, and that's probably not easy to pull off this year. But as we get years into this, that would be really nice to see.
Great feedback. Thank you.
Hey, Judy, can I just intervene real quick or mention something real quick and ask a question?
Sure.
First of all, I know John was, I can't remember if John was on the board. I was not, but I was participating as a member of the public when we had the mess with the audit 2 years ago now. So that was one problem, and I'm not sure if Dino or Craig has. I know there's those audited actuals should be somewhere. It would be nice to see them, but I don't expect you to be able to dig them out by pushing a button. So, but it would be helpful to the board to see those audited actuals if we can get them in the next week or so. John is right in that reference. I do want to remind John and the rest of the board members, if they remember, how much of a mess it was at the previous 2 years ago now.
That was like 2 months after I started on the board.
Was it? Yeah. So, and I know you remember how fun it was. So.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and now I'm confident that Dina and Craig will be able to provide you with that information. And I do have hard copies of our old budget presentations, not electronic copies, that include the audited actuals for different items. I know categories have changed over the years, but I'm confident Dina and Craig can provide that, and can provide them with hard copies of prior year's documents if they need it. But I don't think they will. I think they'll be able to work it out.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Yep, I have a few more questions. Are we going to have another opportunity for questions with the Board of Education at another meeting?
If they're available, we can schedule them.
John, the meeting on, hang on, I have to pull my calendar.
We go over all the budgets.
Yeah, the scheduled meeting on March 10th is specifically on the budget calendar, designed for if next week on the 3rd that the board decides there's questions or departments or boards that they want questions answered from, that's to provide the notification to those boards or commissions or departments. So there's actually 2 weeks available, the 3rd and the 10th, but specifically the 10th. If you have a question, that's what that meeting is in that calendar for.
Okay, and I think they have a Board of Education meeting on the 3rd, so the 10th, I guess, would be better.
Meetings on the 10th, Craig?
I have the 10th. Dean and I have the 10th on our calendar for the Board of Finance. That was one of our agreed upon dates. So,
Yeah.
but not the 3rd.
Right.
Okay.
Our next Board of Ed meeting is March 3rd. But
Right. I think that's why it was scheduled that way, if I recall. So, okay.
Makes sense.
All right, I will probably have some more questions once I see the class breakdown data.
Mhm.
I do have some more questions, but I'm not doing my job if I don't ask them, but I don't
Okay.
want to ask them. Craig, this is your first year here, and it's, is there an opportunity to ask questions not in the public forum?
Sure.
Okay, I would rather do that because I feel like I'm ambushing you with stuff that was out of your control before your tenure, and it just looks bad. And I would rather have a discussion with you privately with this stuff, and you know, it's less related to budget, but semi-related to budget. And I think it'd be better for all of us if we did it that way.
I'm always available, John, and I'm happy to come to board meetings as well.
Okay, I'll reach out to you privately then. Thank you. And that's all I had for tonight.
I have one more question, as far as the breakdown with teachers in special ed. Can you include that with the student information?
It has both, Judy. It has the breakdown along with the class sizes and total students in that grade. It's everything you need. You know what? Let me just send it to you right now. Just give me a second. I'm going to send it right to you.
Are you going to share that with the full Board of Finance?
I hope so.
Okay, thanks.
I
If
may
you
not
send
have
it to me, Craig, I can send it to everybody in 2 clicks.
You got it. Hold on. Give me 30 seconds.
Of course, I say that now I can't get my screen to clear off.
Let me just attach the doc. Give me a few seconds here. Okay, the document, John, Paul, and Judy, will not only contain the chart that you requested, it will contain the questions that the Board of Ed asked, as well as a few other documents. So I'm sending you the whole thing.
Thank you.
You got it, Paul. Yep,
And we can share this, correct?
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay.
Anybody else?
Judy, just one comment. I believe Paul had a question regarding insurance. We are in the final year of a 1-year contract that we had with town staff. And our present contract does say that insurance can be substituted, deleted, or changed under mutual agreement. So we will be sitting down with our folks and going over that. I know one of the questions that's come up a number of times, and I just want to emphasize, Craig and I are very conscious of concerns about pre-existing conditions, and anything that we do with making a recommendation on changing carriers, we will certainly be doing side-by-side comparisons and also addressing to make sure that if we have those, and we both have them, people with pre-existing conditions, that those are addressed. That's all I had, Judy. And I would just like to say thank you very much for an excellent presentation between you and Dina and Jane. Looking at somewhat of as an observer, I do appreciate it.
So,
Hey, everybody, I sent the document or forwarded the document, so everybody should get it. If you don't, you know my number.
thank you, Paul. Okay, any other questions? Concerns? I'd like to thank you guys. You did an awesome job. Craig, Jane, and Dina. Sorry, we went through the ringer of all the questions, but you know, some's curiosity, some is for new people. But we appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Chairman Austin, can I speak just for a minute?
Certainly.
I want to thank you. I welcome the questions. I want to thank First Selectman Folletti. I want to thank Chairman Urban and Dina for being on the call tonight. We welcome all of these inquiries. I want to say unequivocally, we are entering a new era of transparency and collaboration, and we are both by computerizing our accounting system and having these types of meetings, we can meet these challenges head on. We're very cognizant that at the end of the day, it's all the town's money. It's all the taxpayers' money. So we're doing our best to deliver a status quo budget. And you can see we've already cut 5 of the 9 areas. We're doing our best with insurance and diesel. So we're going to give it our best effort. Rest assured.
Thank you.
And I just want to especially thank Dina and Craig. You, as Paul referenced earlier, we've had some challenging years in the business office at Ashford School, and this has just been such a wonderfully peaceful year on that front, which is fantastic because all other fronts are blowing up. So I really want to thank Superintendent Kreller and Dina Charzan for their hard work and their dedication. So thank you for your questions as well tonight. I think you guys were actually a little nicer to them than the Board of Ed was during our questioning. So thank you.
Okay. With that being said, we'll move on to agenda 9, item 9, for items for March 3rd. So we'll have to put back on the table the transfer of the unassigned funds, fund balance to the Board of Education on lapsing when Cheryl's here, and also the discussion and transfer of funds from unassigned balance to CNR if we have a better idea of actual numbers.
Sorry about that. And just a reminder that on the budget calendar, that meeting is basically it allows us as a board for conversation about all the budgets, Board of general budget from Board of Selectmen, the Board of Ed budget, and what we know about Region 19 at the time. So that'll be the 3 agenda items unless people have other things that come up.
So at that meeting, are we, because there's a few departments that I'm very interested in calling in. Should we decide as a bulk next week? Or Bill, do you want us to, say who we want to see now, or?
You're muted, Bill.
Sorry, but your pleasure. We can do some now. If you want to give it some thought, just let me know next week.
Okay.
I have given my folks, I think I've got an idea who you're gonna be wanting to talk to, but I have given my folks a heads up to try to be available as we need them, either on the 3rd or the 10th.
Okay. Yeah, no stone unturned this year.
Are we gonna get a
shouldn't-
digital copy? Are we gonna get a digital copy to the town budget?
I thought one was sent out, John. I'll double check on that.
It's on the it's on the website under the meeting materials for last week's meeting.
Okay,
should
I'll go
be.
back and check.
If it's not there, we can let Cheryl know, but it was supposed to be there. Bill, you had mentioned the possibility of having your board join that meeting next week. Is that something that you're interested in doing, or do you think it's necessary?
Well, I just left that open for discussion. I'm sure that if we asked Roger and Catherine to join us, they'd be happy to do that. I had some thoughts perhaps of having a joint meeting. But I'm open. I'd like to hear your feedback. At the meeting that we had yesterday, and Paul, you did happen to attend, it seems, with the exception of one or two items, the new position here item, that we're pretty firm in supporting our department's recommendations. But we will be fine tuning that on our special meeting on the 9th. But whatever your comfort levels are.
So maybe if everybody can give it some thought, we can come up with a list of people that, or departments that we'd like to talk to for next week and the week after.
That's fine.
All righty. Let's see.
Judy, for the agenda for the next meeting, do we need to make a note of that letter about the Yale pilot money?
Yeah, we could probably, I don't know, is Cheryl going to be around for sure, Bill? Next week?
Yes, Lord willing. As far as I know, she'll be back to work on Monday.
Okay, yeah, we could do that.
Short of
Because she
having a
knows the most
blizzard
about
or
that.
something again.
So noted.
Done. Okay, for the remarks for the good of the board, I thank you guys. You guys really asked a lot of good questions. I think it was informative to the new members and old members. There's a lot of information to digest and think about. This is pretty important year. Everybody's, trying to do their best. And I think the school did an awesome job as far as answering our questions. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody who took the time and the willingness to participate, and I hope you have a good night.
Thanks, Judy.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn.